Hi, today on the Interior Collective, I am honored to be sitting down with Parris of Parris McKenna Design, a Toronto-based interior design firm that has experienced what I truly would call star power acceleration. Not only is Parris the principal of one of House and Home's top 100 design studios, she is a close personal friend and a dear advisor. In just a few short years, Paris has grown her studio from a new business to a multi office operation serving both Toronto and Muskoka with a large and expanding team to support it. And what fascinates me most is not just the growth, but the infrastructure behind it. We are diving into her 0 to 60 trajectory, how she built momentum quickly, what operational decisions supported that scale, how she structured her team, and how YouTube became a serious marketing engine for her business. If you are in a season of growth or hoping to be, this episode is going to give you a real look at what scaling actually requires. This season is presented by Leloy, makers of rugs, pillows, and wall art collections that are grounded in ethical production, innovative craft, and meticulous design. Learn more about Leloy by visiting their website, leloyrugs.com. That's LOLOI rugs.com, and follow Leloy Rugs on Instagram and TikTok. Are you running your design firm with a patchwork of tools? Material brings it all into one intuitive system finally. Try it free at getmaterio.com and get 50% off your first month as an Interior Collective listener. That's GETMATERIO.com. Hi, Paris. Welcome to the Interior Collective. I can tell my cheeks are already hurting because I talked to you for 5 seconds before we hit record. And I'm just going to be giddy this whole entire time because I get to talk to one of my very best friends in the world.
Me too. And I have been looking forward to this for so long and I'm so excited, but this is my first podcast and just being able to be in a familiar zone with you, it's making my entrance into this podcast world feel very comfortable. So thank you for having me.
Well, I will not go easy on you. So,
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready.
okay. So, Paris, I'd love to start at the beginning, the very beginning, which was not very long ago. When you officially launched Parris McKenna Design, what did the business look like back on day one?
Okay, so the kind of start of Parris McKenna Design was not something that I had planned on or something that I was developing for a long period of time before it happened. It really happened out of circumstance. I was at a studio in Toronto and it just wasn't the right environment for me anymore. And so I was talking to my husband and I said, I don't know what to do now. I don't have a I don't have a degree in interior design, and I really don't have a ton of experience other than at this firm. And I was worried that going to start applying to other firms, I would be asked, for the technical skills or have I been with other firms for many years? And he said, why don't you just try it yourself? And so there was no master business plan. I didn't have an idea of where I was going to go or what I was going to do, but I thought, okay, I love this. I think I'm good at it. I think there's enough trust in me that I've had with past projects from clients that I can try. And what's the worst that happens? The worst that happens is that it doesn't work. And then I have to go apply to other firms and see what happens there. But it really was taking a massive leap of faith, trusting myself and what I felt I know I could do. And then literally the day after I gave my notice to the firm that I was at, I was sitting in my spare bedroom and I had my very first bag of samples from Centura, which is a tile supplier in Toronto and it's across Canada. And I had picked up a bag of samples and it said Parris McKenna Design on it. And I was like, all right, here we go. It's my name on the bag, buckle up. It's time to go. Yeah.
Paris, I think I'm actually realizing I don't know the answer to this, which makes me question the depth of our friendship. What were you doing before you were at another studio?
Yes. Okay. So that's a great question. So I went to university for geography and sociology. I got my Bachelor of Arts. That was nothing to do with anything, but I really wanted to go and get a university education and move away from home. So from Vancouver, I moved to the other side, essentially, of the country, or at least partway through to just outside of Toronto. It's a city called London. I went to university there and I did my Bachelor of Arts. And I dreamed of being a wedding planner. So then once I finished my degree at Western, I moved to Toronto and I did a diploma in event planning. So I was the wedding planner at the Trump Hotel for, I would say, I think it was like 3 years. And that was right before he ran for presidency the first time. And with the climate being what it was not looking like it was going to be a long-term career option. Events started not canceling as much as like the interest in booking events just wasn't there anymore. People didn't really want to have their name associated with that. And so, sorry if that's too political, but yeah, people just were choosing other. There's lots of luxury hotel options in Toronto, and they were choosing to have events elsewhere. And so, at that point, I was like, well, this ship is going down. I would rather get out kind of now than be in a position where I was forced to figure out something else. So at that point, my best friend had said, I know you're really interested in design. I have my sister's best friend is going on maternity leave. They're looking to fill her position. It's a small firm in the East End of Toronto. Why don't you go and apply and see what happens? And I was very lucky because it's a husband and wife owner of it's a real estate company, but they also have a department in design, and they work on people's houses to get them ready for listing on the market. And so we did renovations on these houses before they would go to market. And the wife had a background in event planning. And so she was like, okay, these skills are transferable. I can see how this, could turn into something for you. You'll start junior and then you'll move your way up and see what happens. But it really, like, they took a very big chance on me. And so, despite kind of the final months that I was there, it was a huge opportunity. It was literally where I learned to swim. It was very much sink or swim and figure it out. And I did. And I was there for 6 years and I grew exponentially there. So I am forever indebted to them taking that chance on me, because otherwise I would not have gotten my foot in the door quite the same way.
Okay, well, I mean, 6 years is not nothing. So
Totally.
that definitely helps paint a better picture for me. And I'm so glad I asked you. I'm like, how did I not know that that's what you were doing? Um,
Just an
okay,
endless supply of information.
so how many years has it technically been since you had your bag of samples that said Parris McKenna Design? And from there, at what point do you feel like acceleration really start to begin?
Yeah. Okay. So that first day of me having my samples was October 2021. And I found out I was pregnant with my second baby in January of 2022. So all of a sudden I was like about to spread my wings. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. So it was a huge blessing and it was obviously incredible, but the timing was just not what I had in mind, as sometimes happens with pregnancy. But to the time, I really felt like, okay, this is picking up, honestly. And I'll say this to one of the other questions as well. Like, it was September of 2025 when I was like, oh my God, this is like, I'm running a real studio now. It took the first 4-ish years for me to feel like this is a real thing. And even still, I'm like, I don't see myself the same way that people in my world see me or see the studio. It's very much a difficult thing for me to kind of reconcile in my mind, because to me we're still a little studio, but we're not. So yeah, I would say kind of it took the full 4 years until I felt like, okay, this is it.
Isn't that so interesting how so many of us have this studio dysmorphia?
100%. Oh my God. I am so glad you said that, because I didn't know what to call it. It's like, it's not that I have imposter syndrome, because I feel very confident. I feel like if you don't like my work, that's no problem. You will go find somebody else. I'm not trying to be anybody that I'm not, but it is exactly studio dysmorphia. That's exactly what it is. You nailed that.
It totally is. I mean, even when I talk with Amber Lewis, she's like, we're still small fries in our brains. And I'm like, okay, girl.
You're like,
Wow.
not so much, but it's true. It's true. Yeah, for sure.
So back then in 2021,
Mhm.
and you were pregnant with your second, was rapid growth the goal from the start, or did the demand really surprise you? was there demand at that point?
Yeah, so I can kind of tell you how the trajectory went. Rapid growth was not my goal from the start. I just wanted one client. I was like, if I can just get one client, I will be very lucky. And I was very fortunate that when I let my clients that I was working with at the past firm know that I was departing, I mean, in interior design, it's all about building relationships, right? And even for you, it's all about building relationships. And so these clients had built their relationships with me. And so when I said, I'm departing, we're going to hand you over, properly, there's going to be a seamless transition. They were like, well, we want to stay with you. What are you doing? Where are you going? And I was like, well, I'm going to try and go out on my own. I don't know what it's going to be. It's just me. I don't know. And I was unbelievably lucky to those first handful of clients who were like, you know what, let's try, let's see what happens. And we trust you and we're going to go with you. So I had 6 clients that left the firm that I was at and go with me. And so all of a sudden I'm sitting in my spare bedroom and I'm like, oh, okay, but now I also have a full client list of a couple of them were decorating projects, but 2 of them were big projects. One of the 2 was a tear down of a house and a whole new build, right? And so I had I had a very lucky, if you will, entry into kind of my own start, my own business. And that was during COVID. That was 2021, 2022. And so there was a boom and we all kind of felt it in the industry. It was like people have all this money, they're at home, they want to do things. So that was great. And then yeah, it was about 2020, end of 2022, beginning of 2023. And all of a sudden things were different with COVID. All of a sudden things opened back up again. People were able to spend more money doing other things. They were going traveling. They were not investing as much in their homes. And things got really quiet for us. And it was at a point where I was like, what am I doing this for? What is my goal? What do I want to achieve? And those were, pretty dire times. I laid people off at that point. I had one senior with me and we were like, how are we going to drum up business? And we sent out mailers and we met with builders and we went for coffees with different people that we thought we could, develop relationships with. And then I wish I could put my finger on the point that it kind of turned around. But I would say like beginning of 2024. 2023 was the year where it felt very like, oh God, we got to figure this out. And 2024 was when it picked back up. So for the last 2 years, I would say it's been quite quite a trajectory. Yeah, I don't know, like quite to the moon.
Okay, Paris, we can edit this out if you don't want to talk about it, but I know everybody is like, okay, it's like everyone's worst nightmare that like their senior designer is going to go out and take all of their clients.
Mhm.
How did that exit and then clients choosing to go with you? How did that, I don't even need to know like how that worked out with you and your boss, but like how did that legally work
For
out,
sure.
like contractually?
For sure. So I did have a non-compete in my agreement. And beyond that, like, you know me, so you know this, but like for everybody who's listening, I am not the type of person to stir up anything. I would never want to step on toes. I am unbelievably grateful for the experience that they gave me and the opportunities they gave me. And so for me, it was very much a thank you to my clients who have given me, these last few great months. Now I'm going to transition you into another designer on the team. And so when it became apparent that the clients were the ones who were like, we want to go with Parris, that's when I had to sit down with my former employers and say, how do we make this work? And for a couple of them, there were splits and I paid them back um, like chunks of money, which were hours worked while I was there that hadn't been yet billed on their side. And I thought, okay, I was working, I was using their infrastructure, I was using their resources. Absolutely, those are rightly theirs. But because it came from the clients and it was a client's directive to say, we want to go with Parris, there wasn't too much that they could do. But man, it was a very stressful time. And for me, I'm like, this is way more uh like this is I'm not used to that level of confrontation. This was very, very nerve-wracking for me, and they were also friends, and like, not the clients, but my employers. We had, they're friends with Fraser and I, and it was important to me to maintain the relationship. So it was very much, how do we make sure that you're we're both even. You're taken care of, I'm taken care of, and they just knew, like, it wasn't me saying, "Hey guys, come with me." It was the client saying, "We want to go." But yes, 100%. I think that's every studio head's kind of worst nightmares. Like, all of a sudden your clients leave with somebody else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Not to mention just like, okay, well now they have our processes and all of these things.
Totally.
Um,
100%.
and when we talk about this at design camp and like when I work on it it's such a natural fear and feeling that people have. But I'm always so inspired by people who really set their team up for careers and they're like if they're ready to go spread their wings then they paid their dues and that's just part of the game.
So it was not that. It was definitely not that. It was very much like, I remember at one point they were like, "You're not going to succeed. You're going to have no success. You don't have a degree." And it was very much, stirred in me, like, if you're going to tell me I can't, I definitely am going to go and do it. And then to further that, I was so um, hyper aware of what I would do differently if I owned a business, that my first thing I did, so I think my first day on my own was like October 21st, and I signed up for design camp like October 22nd. That was the first thing that I was like, I need to invest in myself. This is where I want to invest my money. And design camp is what allowed me to start my business off on the right foot. I would have, maybe eventually I would have figured it out, but you guys set me up with this foundation that was completely opposite to what I was doing before. So, again, with your comment about it's nerve-wracking if somebody was to take your systems and processes, I actually did the exact opposite. I took nothing and knew exactly what I didn't want to do, and then found my footing because of design camp.
Well, that is so nice, Paris. I still laugh at the fact that like it came up in conversation one day that I absolutely fucking forgot you came to design
I
camp.
know.
I was like, "Oh my God, Paris and I are like such organic friends. Like we met through the internet, blah, blah, blah." And
Oh
she's like,
God.
"Girl,
Girl,
no,
she was there. Yes. I mean, like, it was one of your
it
earlier-ish
was
ones.
early."
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
it was. It would have been the 22. Yeah,
yeah.
it
It was
was.
January 2022. Yeah, it was your first one at Santa Monica, and, like, but it was amazing, and, like, I say this to everybody who is looking for business advice, is, like, you start there. Start at design camp, and then, and even people who've been in the industry for a long time, like, you got a really good thing going there.
Oh, thank you, Paris. Okay, so you had those projects that came over with you. When and how before it slowed down in that 2023 year,
Mhm.
was that 2022 year mostly just those 6 projects? Were you onboarding anybody new? And if so, who were you finding to bring on that was not your previous or existing clients?
Yes. Okay. So, sorry, onboarding from a employee perspective or from a client perspective?
Sorry, from a client perspective. Like, so you brought those clients over, but then how did you start getting your own
Own
clients,
clients.
if you will?
Yes. So it ended up being a lot of word of mouth, signage, and Instagram. I started being very just like open and public about stuff on Instagram. And like, I laughed because when we were all together in Provence and when we were all together in the Cotswolds, I think out of our group, I was the only one who was posting things in real time. And everybody else is, making sure that it looks polished and ready to go. And I'm just like, ugh, I just post in real time. I don't know. I can't hold on to it. I don't know I also don't know how to edit things. So it's like, I think from the beginning I've been very myself and very transparent in all of that. And so I was able to kind of gain interest and potential clients from that. But a lot of it was word of mouth at that point.
Okay, super helpful. We're going to get into this later, but in this, 4, 5 year trajectory, when did you know it was time to open a Muskoka office in addition to Toronto, and whether we say office and that's, you in your bedroom or, a physical space, when and why did that make sense? Because that feels fresh.
It is fresh. So again, kind of going back to this, like I just put things on Instagram. Like I post whatever I posted. So we were living in Muskoka for 2 years, and I was working on projects up there, but the majority of my projects were in the city. And I was like, I want to do more up here. And so randomly in the winter of 2024, we'd had a bad snowstorm, and Fraser was taking our daughter up to the school bus stop on the snowmobile. And I posted that, and it was just like funny that, like, look, we're living in the middle of nowhere. He's taking her on a snowmobile up to her bus stop. And a builder in Muskoka, whoever runs his Instagram account, wrote back and said, "Are you local?" And I said, "I am. I'm living in Muskoka." And they said, "Okay, well, would you like to come in and have a meeting with the person who runs our company up here? We're always looking for local talent up here." And Toronto has, as you know, a lot of designers, and a lot of designers also work in Muskoka, but there's not a huge market in Muskoka of kind of born and bred only Muskoka designers. There's for sure a few, but there's more Toronto transplants that do work up there. So I had a meeting. His name's Aaron. He runs a company called Hummingbird. And I had a meeting with Aaron, and I thought, this is great. This is the type of connection that I want to make. And when I was meeting with Aaron, he said, "Have you met Alex Forshoe? He is an architect up in Muskoka as well." And I said, "I've not met him. I know his work. He does incredible stuff. Would love to meet him." And he said, "Why don't I set up a meeting with you guys?" I thought, great. So I meet Alex in January 2025, and we're now February 2026. And as of now, over the last year, we have developed a working relationship that entails Alex proposing to clients a full service build opportunity where he handles exteriors, I handle interiors, and then there's landscaping and all of that. So that is now what he pitches on projects. And his reason for that is he is a very, very detailed architect, as most are. But he wanted to have greater control over the whole process. He didn't want to as much develop the envelope and then hand it over to the builder, or the design team comes in from a different company, and things don't marry between the interior and exterior. So he was really looking for this partner, if you will. And I was looking to do more work in Muskoka. And so we developed kind of this plan, if you will, to have this full service approach. And it then was part of the overall kind of function of the office, was to make sure that we have people there in person. And so now I have 2 people that work out of his office. They are up there essentially full time. I go up once a week, and we are working out of Alex's office. So we have our own little area, and that way when clients come in, they're meeting with him, then they're meeting with us, and it's a very holistic kind of approach. But it was only when I started to have this conversation with Alex, and when we realized, like, we both wanted something from each other, that it was able to develop into this approach. So we're really lucky. Muskoka is a very different market than Toronto, and I'm very lucky to be involved there.
Had you done a project with Alex before this came up?
Okay, no, but our lovely mutual friend Tiffany. So Tiffany had been talking to Alex. Tiffany has done a project with Alex before, and she had been in talks with him to do his house. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is just they have different aesthetics overall. And so Tiffany had said, you would maybe be better. Do you want to talk to my friend Parris? And Alex then reached out to me because of that. And then when Aaron from Hummingbird connected us, it kind of all came full circle. And Alex and his wife ended up hiring me to do their own house. So in that kind of, we're hiring you to do our own house, let's also see how we can turn this into a bit more of a full service approach for clients.
How different are those 2 markets from like an operational standpoint? So you said you have 2 people up there, you're going up there once a week. I actually didn't realize you were in office in Muskoka once a week. Do you approach projects differently in Muskoka versus in Toronto?
Very different all the way down to, like, our pricing structure. We do different pricing in Toronto than we do in Muskoka. We have our overall process is the same, how we work through design, how we get into our technical drawings, our, site visits, those things are the same. But I would say our pricing is very different, and the the budgets and the landscape are very different. Toronto, we do a lot of renovations. There's not as many new builds that we work on, a lot of like infills in Toronto, and you're, renovating these old homes. Where in Muskoka, the people that I'm working with through Alex are tear downs, new builds. We're building big cottages, two-story boathouses, big garages that are also like these games rooms and lofts and all of that. So the scope is quite different, but I would say our pricing and just the general kind of landscape of what's up there are the two biggest things.
Okay, two clarifying points I feel like we need to make. A, the Tiffany you were referring to is Tiffany Lee Design.
Yes, that's the one.
B, Paris and apparently all Canadians use the term cottage very loosely. So when she's talking about cottages, in my brain as an American, they are tearing down cottages and they are building mansions. Cottage means lake house in Canadian, so you're aware.
Yes. Yeah. So these cottages, like for example, one that we're working on with Alex, the cottage is 7,500 square feet. So loose term. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that is a colloquialism that is
Yes.
is different
Yes.
amongst our neighboring countries.
Yes.
So, okay, how many people are currently on your team across both offices?
So we have 10 people, including myself, across both offices, which is to me like, oh my God. And we just brought on two new people in the last 2 weeks, and we have our Monday morning meetings. Everybody is on site in our office in Toronto on Monday mornings. And the other day, all the chairs were full. And I was like, oh my God, like, oh my God, because it wasn't always like that. So yes, 10 people across the two teams.
We are so excited to invite you to dive deeper into the Interior Collective podcast episodes now on Patreon. Unlock access to in-depth analysis, helpful downloads, and worksheets created with each podcast episode. Subscribers gain behind-the-scenes access to additional resources like examples and screenshots of guest spreadsheets, construction documents, and so much more. Your subscription also gets you immediate access to our private community of interior designers and our team of industry experts ready to answer your questions. Subscribe now at patreon.com/The Interior Collective or linked in the show notes. Join the Interior Collective Patreon community and let's continue this conversation. This spring, Leloy is headed back to High Point Market with so many new introductions, including a debut rug collection that's made with a groundbreaking new construction, along with a beautiful spring season from Rifle Paper Company. They're also hosting exclusive High Point events in their showroom, including one with designer Amber Lewis. If you haven't already, book your High Point appointment at leloyrugs.com, LOLOI rugs.com, and make sure to follow Leloy Rugs on Instagram and TikTok. Okay, so you have your Muskoka team drive into the city on Mondays for this in person.
Yes. So the senior who's leading Muskoka was a Toronto person. And he was here on contract because one of our seniors was on mat leave, and he is fantastic. And our senior Kimberly was coming back from maternity leave, and I knew I didn't want to lose Jake because he's amazing, but I didn't need three seniors because I've got Kimberly who's coming back from mat leave, Dana who's fantastic, and then Jake. And so we hadn't quite come up to the point of the end of his contract where we were going to discuss what was going to happen, but leading up to it, I had posted that I needed a senior in Muskoka. And he was like, would you consider me for the role? And I was like, yeah, but you and your husband live in Toronto. And he was like, we have a place up north. I really want this opportunity. Can I go up there, go up Monday nights, come back down Friday mornings type thing? And so Alex and I kind of worked through the logistics of that because, again, I want to be aware and considerate to what he is looking for. And that ultimately was something that was going to work out. So Jake is up there the majority of the week, but he does start his week in the city and then he goes up north. And then Kelly, our newest junior designer, she lives halfway between Toronto and Muskoka. So she does a bit of a commute.
Got it. Okay, amazing. Okay, let's talk company structure. So you kind of broke it down a little bit, but let's talk about who reports to whom, what roles exist inside the firm. And I always want to know, like, where do you feel like your role is now that all your chairs are full?
All my chairs are full. It's crazy. Okay, so we have 3 senior designers, 1 intermediate, and 2 juniors. So the intermediate and the 2 juniors are reporting to their respective seniors because my goal when I first started was that I wanted enough business that I could have these 2 perfect little teams, a senior, an intermediate, and a junior, and they would be their own kind of little bubbles, and they would be able to handle projects independently of the other team, and that when a new project came in, I could assign it to one of those 2 teams. So I am almost there. I've got 2 seniors and a junior in Toronto, and I've got a senior and a junior in Muskoka, and then the intermediate goes between the 2. So we're very close, but I rely on these seniors to be the ones who the intermediate and the juniors are reporting to. And then the seniors and I meet once a week and we go over everything that we need to go over. Our studio manager reports to me, our marketing and brand manager reports to me, and then our account manager as well reports to me. So I still am, I'm still quite involved, but we can go through it if you want. But I worked, as you know, with Brooke Stoll and completely changed my day to day and my role and the amount of stress that I had on my plate. So, yeah.
Interesting. You changed the amount of stress you had on your plate.
Oh my God, yeah.
Does that mean that you feel like you gave up creative, that you got to get back to creative? What is, I'm just interested in what does it mean to you that the stress on your plate changed after working with Brooke?
So I think the biggest thing for me was that when I was designing, I was always the bottleneck. I was the one that people were waiting for answers or design direction or whatever it was so that they could go do their parts. But as you know, running a business in itself is a full-time job. And so I was always saying, okay, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to it. I'll get to it at night after the kids are in bed, or I'll get to it on the weekends or whatever. And I remember very clearly, it was Father's Day last year. And Fraser said to me, and he's not really like a make a decision kind of like he wants me to do whatever is going to make me happy and whatever is going to fulfill my soul, and whatever he needs to do to support that, he will do. But he said, I think you need to have a hard look at things because what you're doing right now isn't working. You are not available as a mother in the way that I know you want to be. As a wife, like, bless his heart, he still said I was doing a good job, but I do not think I was doing a good job. And as a boss, I knew where my shortcomings were because everybody's always waiting on me and asking me if I'm gonna, get there and get there and get there. And so we had this really like deep conversation about how things needed to shift. And I said at that point, I have such an incredible team and I will sing their praises forever. And I will say 1,000 times over, I would not be here without my team. There is absolutely no way. And so the design portion, the technical skills, that was covered. What wasn't covered is the business. And so I am not at a point yet where I not trust, where I am ready to hand over my business reins to somebody else. And so in working with Brooke, it was very much about how to make sure that everybody on the team had the empowerment and the ability to do what needed to be done without relying on me, which allowed me to focus on the business things, which in turn allowed me to, I go home at the end of the day and 9 times out of 10, I close my computer when I leave work and that's it. And that was not the case before I started working with Brooke. And I am with my kids when I'm home and I'm with my husband and I am present and I am not holding up anything on the design side, which I'm like, Brooke made it work for me. She made it work. And I mean, to answer your question, like, I am not in the weeds with designing. I am creating the overall direction. I am saying, this is what I want this project to look and feel like. And the seniors are then coming to me and they're saying, these are the concepts. Okay, yep, tweak this, change that, whatever. And then they're coming to me for the design presentations, review all of these samples, let me know what you want to tweak. And I'm making the tweaks. And it feels kind of cool to be the one who I'm like, I don't like that, like, change it. And then they do, but it's different. I'm not the one who's designing as much anymore. And also with that, we had to do kind of an overhaul with how our clients understood our team functions, right? And it is my name on the door. And, I don't have a studio name that's kind of ambiguous or vague that it could be anybody leading it, right? And so I had to be very careful, and I still am very careful about when I'm involved and where I kind of step in, while also making sure that I give the clients the ability to trust in my designers because they are freaking fantastic.
Were you proactive about hiring ahead of demand, or were you pretty consistently hiring in reaction to growth? Like into specific inquiries, you're like, oh shit, I need to hire someone to be able to do this job. Because I feel like it's a chicken or the egg
Yes.
question that a lot of designers struggle with.
Yes, I was more reactive. Just in general, I have a very like I have a separate bank account on like in our corporate accounts for just profits because I need to know like am I doing where is what money is ours and what is accounts payable and all of that. So I have a very hard time financially committing to something when I don't know what the outcome is going to be. So I was very reactive in that sense. Um I hired, for example, when Kimberly went on mat leave the first time, I knew I needed coverage, so I hired. But for the rest, it was reactive. It was projects coming in, and we need more support, and here's where we're at. With the exception, I would say, of Lily, our junior designer who came on, I believe it was in August or maybe September. I knew we needed a junior, but I didn't think that we were gonna have enough to fill, like, a salaried role, and, oh my god, have I proven myself wrong, like, this girl could work 80 hours a week if I let her, but I try not to because you gotta have some balance, but yeah, yeah.
What was your first key hire and how did that decision change your capacity? So, I mean, I don't know how quickly you hired someone, please tell me, but like you started with 6 projects at, various
Yeah.
stages of their completion. What was that first hire and do you feel like that was the right one?
So something I learned at design camp was, hire for the skills that you need and for what you don't necessarily not that I didn't want to do it, but what was taking up my time that could be better spent elsewhere. So my first hire was like an admin and procurement role. She came on 3 months in because there was just so much admin and so much procurement and all of that. So that was my first hire. Wouldn't have changed that. She was fantastic. She was with us for many years. She ended up being she was part-time, I needed full-time, she couldn't do that, so we have somebody full-time now. But it's interesting, it's like I had key hires at different stages, like, my first key hire was that, my second key hire was technical, like, I am not trained in AutoCAD or Revit, I do not do the technical drawings. We leveled up so much when we had Dana come on our team, who is our senior technical designer, and she was incredible. And that almost took us to the next level where we were handing over construction drawings that I was really proud of. And I was like, this is how a real studio hands over construction drawings. And then I would say, just kind of bringing in the support as needed. But those were probably the two key hires. The very beginning was admin and procurement, and the second was technical.
Got it. Okay, across multiple offices and design teams, how do you feel like you're maintaining consistency in your design standards and client experience when you're not necessarily the person doing the client communication, your teams are, and you have Monday meetings in person, so you can definitely set the tone with that. But when you've got people in different places, different projects, different pricing
Yep.
models, how are you maintaining standards?
That's a great question. So I did all of our SOPs with Brooke. I went through the biggest deep dive you can imagine, and I'm sure, as you know from working with her, but we standardized everything, and it is so detailed and so down to like the minutia of things that every new hire has to read that and understand it, and the seniors are responsible for executing that. So I am there checking in and making sure that things are overall going as they need to, but it is very much the senior's responsibility to ensure that what our SOPs are being followed. And listen, I mean, it, things are evolving all the time. I just stepped out of this design role and into more of this like founder and creative director role. So I am still very heavily involved. And even though I'm not the one replying to client emails and actually designing things, I am copied on everything. I am still talking to my team 100 times a day. I'm not like sitting in my office with my door closed, just looking at numbers type thing. Um, and hopefully one day it will get to a point where there's less kind of not involvement, but just, that I won't need to have as many check-ins. But for now, while we're all still moving through this kind of new model that really has only been implemented since I finished with Brooke, which was in September of last year, like we're still just making sure things work and things come up and we have to deal with them as they come up.
Yeah. For those listening who don't know the jargon, SOP, standard operating procedure, and um, Brooke definitely spells out literally every single thing, your exact process of how you order, how you do your drawings, like any task that happens within your business. Brooke is helping you build exactly how that's done so that anybody who onboards can know exactly how could step into your business. After working with Brooke, ideally, I could come in and run Parris McKenna Design for probably not a super long time, but
You could run it for a solid year, okay? You would be set up for 1 year.
just in case the SOP language didn't make
Yes.
sense to someone. What do you feel like was the biggest operational mistake you've made during this growth that you would caution other designers against?
I would say this probably has to do with just like outside influence, which software to use, who to hire, what your consultation should look like. I know it's so cliche to say, but like I wish that I would have just gone a bit more with my gut rather than thrown a bunch of stuff at the wall and waited to see what stuck. Like for example, I spent a whole whack of money onboarding with Dubsado. Absolutely hated it. Do not use Dubsado. I'm sure it's wonderful for the people who use it and enjoy it, and that's great. But for me, it wasn't the right system. And so operationally, I think, you know, I thought I needed Dubsado, so I did Dubsado. I thought I needed to have a junior designer when I was first starting, when I didn't need a junior designer, and I unfortunately had to let her go because I didn't need somebody green. I needed somebody who was ready to go, who could take the initiative, who could be on site, who could, the things that a senior is a little bit more capable of. And so I wish, not I wish, everything led me to here, but I probably would have tuned out the noise a little bit about um, what I should do, just based on other people's opinions.
Okay, can we talk about pricing? And I'm interested, especially because you have two pricing models in practice. Are you charging flat rate, hourly, cost plus, hybrid model? Um, yeah, anything you can give us.
Great questions. Okay, totally happy to be an open book. And obviously, between you and Lindsay sharing all of your wonderful information, I feel like you guys have opened up the design community to sharing so much information. And I love that about what you guys do. So we have mostly the same model across, but the first phase is different. So in Toronto, we have an hourly design phase. Then we move into a procurement percentage, and then we have install. So hourly in Toronto is anything to do with the initial consultations, which we charge for to go to somebody's house and put together a proposal. We do charge for that. Budgeting, getting quotes, actually designing the space, executing the construction drawings, all of those things is an hourly rate. Then when we move to the procurement, we charge a 20% procurement fee on top of the cost of goods sold. So for the most part, we do not pass along our discounts on anything that we get discounts on. So for example, Crate and Barrel. If something's $100, that's the retail price. We would get it for $80. We do not pass along that $20 savings to the clients. We keep that. We charge the 20% procurement fee on the retail price, so on that 100%. And that covers all of the coordination for our procurement gal to do. She handles all of the ordering, receiving, any damages, anything to do with that, right? And that 20% is also on our warehousing fees. So we use a third-party warehousing facility. They receive and inspect and store all our goods until we're ready for install. So that 20% covers all of that. And then when we move into installation, it just felt weird to have our whole team on site and everybody charging 1 hour for their time for like 8 hours a day type thing. So we do a flat fee for that. And that is $4,000 per day of install and it really is usually the entire team because they're big installs. And then in Muskoka, we are entertaining a per square foot fee for the design phase. And this is very new to me. This is how Alex does it for his projects. And I am interested to see, like, we're trying it. I'm going to look at the data in a year or 6 months and see if we lost money or made money or broke even. But for now, we're doing a square foot fee for design up until the point that we hand over the construction drawings. Then we move into, so there's still the 20% procurement on that. And then we move into what we're calling construction administration. So anything on site, anything that has to be modified in terms of drawings, if there's a change on site, if there's change orders, anything like that. So once the design package is handed over, then we move into this hourly. So it's flat fee, procurement, hourly, and then install in Muskoka. So it's a whole jumble of things. I don't know. I feel like every podcast that you've put out that I've listened to, I don't know what the answer is, whether it should be flat fee or hourly.
If you've been listening to the Interior Collective for a while, you probably have heard all kinds of software recommendations and maybe even tried a few. But if your system still feels kind of all over the place, I totally get it. That's exactly why I wanted to share Materio. That's Materio. It's an all-in-one platform built just for interior designers, from concept to install and everything in between. You can try it for free at getmaterio.com, and Interior Collective listeners get 50% off their first month. I have spent a lot of time and put more and more focus here on this show, trying to figure that out and understanding that everybody's studio runs differently based off of experience and also based off of preference. So there is not a right one. I will say that I'm starting to hear, and maybe it's because like we're creating these spaces where people can talk about it more openly, but I am starting to hear a more general consensus that it makes sense for design to be a flat fee based off of hourly data,
Yep.
of course. And then procurement being a percentage. Some people are still doing procurement hourly. Some people that is more profitable for them. And then construction administration, definitely hourly because you have no control over that.
Totally.
And then I know Lindsay does flat fee for install day. A lot of other people are using. I've also seen some people build that into their initial design fee flat rate just so that it can be, one less phase that they have to
Totally.
break out for someone.
Yeah.
But that is something I'm seeing really become more popular. So I'm interested to follow up with you and see how the square foot model goes. That definitely makes sense when you guys are working directly hand in hand in a package project with an architect. You're building something from the ground up. I can see how that would be something that you're exploring.
Totally. So fingers crossed it pans out.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
How has your pricing evolved as the business grew? And if so, how frequently do you feel like you've been adjusting it?
Another design camp tidbit. I increase my rates every 6 months. I think the biggest thing that I am looking at now, so from start of, October 2021 to now, every designer on the team, including myself, has been at one rate. The juniors, no more in some circumstances than I do. They're technically trained. I am not. I am, good at things that other people are not. So I made the choice to have us all at one fee across the board, one hourly rate. I am toying with the idea of moving into a tiered pricing model. And I'm interested to see how that goes. And we'll see, I'll be at one rate, the seniors will be at another rate, and the intermediate and junior will be at another rate. But across the last 4.5 years, it's been everybody's at the same hourly rate other than like account management and procurement, when we did do procurement hourly, because we used to do procurement hourly. But other than that, designers have always been at the same rate, but a rate increase every 6 months.
Okay, perfect. At what point do you feel like you really understood your numbers, your margins, and your profitability? Because I will say, Brooke Stoll says without hesitation that you are the most profitable design business she has ever worked with.
No,
And
and I cry about, like, I, like, have tears. I'm like, how did I do that? Like, I don't
we're all
know.
like, how did
I
you do
don't know. I don't know. And I'm like, there's an element of me that I'm like so proud, but truly all I want to do is just give that back to the team. I just want to find ways to make sure that everybody knows it is not just me. Like, yes, the risk falls on me. And yes, if something goes wrong, it's ultimately me. But like, God, it is such a team effort. And so when Brooke said that, I'm like, how can I make sure that everybody feels as proud of this accomplishment? Because I think it's an accomplishment. Like, I just want everybody to feel that and to be able to be proud to be part of something that's seemingly going pretty well. So, I mean, I will say I felt super, super confident in understanding my numbers when I finished with Brooke. That was October. And then, as you know, Design Docs, which was the Canadian program that several design studios used, was purchased by Studio Designer. And many designers did their migration throughout 2025 to the new platform of Studio Designer. We did our migration in the middle of November, and I sadly have not had confidence or visibility into my numbers since November. So we are working through it. Everybody on my financial team and the studio designer team are acutely aware of my stresses of not being able to see where my numbers are. Um, and, I have to appreciate that there are growing pains and all of that when moving to a new platform. But I would say the last 3 months have been very, but just my nerves have been a little bit more heightened because my numbers are not correct in studio, and that makes me nervous. But before that, after I'd finished everything with Brooke, I was feeling like I knew exactly what was going on.
Okay. Studio, if you're listening. Although I know that they're aware. They're
Oh,
aware.
they're aware, and luckily it seems that I'm not the only one going through this. I think that there are a lot of the Canadian companies that have moved over that are being very vocal about the challenges that have arisen from this migration.
Yeah, from the acquisition.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you evaluate capacity now? As someone who's leading a studio and truly you're running the business now, as you said, you're not necessarily designing. Is there like a maximum number of active projects you allow one time, or are you still in the stage of growth that you're like, if the business is coming, I'll keep growing?
That's a good question. I have like a bit of a problem with a scarcity mindset. And like I had to print out like ChatGPT mantras for myself the other day because I'm like, oh God, inquiries haven't been coming in lately. Like, are we still going to be okay? So because of that mindset, I will take on more business. However, I have made a conscious decision over the last couple of years to not take on business that does not align with our overall goals or the design direction that we want to move towards, or if it's going to make our portfolio better. And so the answer is yes, I will take new business if it makes sense. But we've got 10 active projects right now, and that feels good and tight, like I want people to be at the point where they feel like they have enough work to you know move through the week and they're not kind of sitting there twiddling their thumbs, but not to the point where like they're working till 10, 11 o'clock at night. Like I don't want people to have that life.
Would you take on another 3 great projects if they felt amazing, but you knew you had to hire, or do you feel like your team's where you want it to be?
My team's where I want it to be. I don't want to have a bigger studio. My dream, my goal when I started this, again, I didn't have this dream of running a business, but when I did start, my dream was to have these two teams and then the support as needed. And because I feel like I'm there with maybe a little bit of refining, like, yeah, I would rather take on projects or put people on a wait list, which scares me so much because I'm like, what if they go somewhere else? But we're trying that out now, and I feel like this is the size of the team that I want to keep. Because ultimately, then it becomes about people management, right? And making sure that the employees are managed to feel good and all of that. And yeah, I like where we're at.
Before we hit record on today's conversation, you were like, I just mentioned that, every episode gets about 10,000 views in the first couple of weeks. And you were like laughing about it because you're like, oh God. But at the same time, you have a huge following on YouTube. So I feel like we need to talk about YouTube because from an outside, I call myself an outside perspective. I feel like I know your business and know you very well. But we need to talk about YouTube because it's something we haven't super explored here on the show.
Mhm.
What made you decide to start your YouTube channel? And how's it going?
It's going great. So, what made me decide to start it? I knew we were going to be doing this renovation. I knew it was going to be extensive, and I had
Your
been
personal
my
home
personal home. Yes, yeah. So we'd bought this house. We knew we were moving back to the city. So we were living in Muskoka, loved Muskoka. The business was so busy in Toronto, and I was going back and forth so often. And Fraser, my husband, was going back and forth so often for work as well that ultimately we were like, okay, we can't be leaving our kids all this. Like we need to go back to the city. So we bought a house that we knew we were going to renovate. And the main catalyst for wanting to do YouTube was because I feel still now that people don't actually know what interior designers do, or they don't understand the depth of what designers do. I think there's a lot of picking paint and picking fabrics and pillows, and yes, that is a component, but like I see these reels on Instagram which make me laugh because they're like, people think an interior designer is, and it's like all the emojis of like painting nails and like paintbrush and like stars and all that, but then they say, but actually it's, and you've got like the scientist calculations and the like the different like calculators and all of that, and it's like, no, we are so much more than just palettes and that kind of thing. And so I thought, if I could film this and teach people or give people at least an inside perspective on what it looks like to work with a designer and a builder, not just, a one-off contractor, would that help people who potentially want to work with me understand what's involved and the level of detail that's required? And so that was kind of the main jumping off point. The second part was that Fraser was like, it'd be cool to watch this back in 5 years and, see all the decisions that were made. But ultimately, it was, I had the resource of a house. I had the ability to film whenever I wanted. And so I made like a pretty hefty investment in the filming of that, with the expectation that it would probably get like 10 views, like my mom and like my sisters and maybe that. And I remember talking to you and you said, if it flops, no one's going to know. And I thought, oh God, that takes the pressure off completely. Like, who cares? And then when it didn't flop, I was like, oh, this is great that it didn't flop, and I was very fortunate because through that series, I was able to work with a lot of great partners. I had a lot of very beautiful sponsored product that went into the house and things that I wouldn't normally have put necessarily, in the sense that it would have been outside of our budget. And so, like, La Cornue, for example, we got an incredible price on the range. I would not have had in our budget to put a La Cornue range in. So, hopefully it's not wasted on me because I don't cook, but it looks beautiful in this space, at least, and Fraser uses it. But yeah, it almost turned into like a bit of a phenomenon that I was not expecting at all.
Okay, so how involved are you in the production of YouTube? Are you scripting, filming, editing in-house? Like, what did it look like? You mentioned you had to make a sizable investment
Yeah.
just to produce it. How producey
Yeah.
are you?
I am very minimally producey. I did not script it. I showed up when I was supposed to show up. I said, so Chelsea, who produced the YouTube series, I hired her. She was freelance, and she is very good at storytelling and figuring out how to make a topic be interesting to the audience. And so she would give me talking points. I luckily am not a I think I'm just not like a nervous person necessarily in front of the camera. Like if people are going to talk negatively, like then they're going to talk negatively, but chances are they won't. And if they do, like it really doesn't matter to me. And so I think I didn't care as much in terms of this has to be perfect. I just wanted people to have a real insight into not only who I was, but also what the process is. And so Chelsea was the one who stick handled all of that. She would send me my, the cuts for me to take a look at and make sure that I liked. And I would tweak things here and there if needed, but I was not the director at all.
Well, you are such a natural. You come across on camera so I mean, way better than you do in person.
Oh
Right.
yeah, I
You
know,
know,
right?
no, but it was so great to
Oh,
watch. It
thank
was
you.
so well done.
Thank you.
Okay, in hindsight, because you guys are living in your beautiful home now, that project's wrapped. I know we've talked offline about like, okay, what do I do with YouTube now? But looking back on the project of your tutor project, um, what kind of content do you feel like performed really, really well? Was it the behind the scenes? Was it problem solving educational? Was it the reveal? Was it like the lifestyle aspect of it? Were there categories that you and Chelsea, I think you
Yeah.
said, um, were like, okay, this one really stuck. We're going to do more of this.
Yeah, to be honest, it was a lot of the like not necessarily like blooper style, but when I was truly just me, when we weren't necessarily going through different design details or the final reveal, like I think the mid-season, if you will, episodes got actually more views than even the final reveal. And I think it's because there was a dynamic between Fraser and I when he was on the episodes that I think resonated well. People really liked when he was involved in like on Instagram and on YouTube. Those did really well, but it really was when I was my most like natural, normal self, when there wasn't as much of a like production element to it. So I would say behind the scenes maybe. And like I remember I got a lot of views on this one video where I'm like taking a sledgehammer to the post on the stairs. And as the like end kind of blooper, Chelsea had included the clip where I was like, oh my God, I need a fake cut. Like I can't sledgehammer this thing. And people loved it. And it was just like, okay, is it just because I'm just normal and relatable and can't smash out a post with a sledgehammer? I don't know, right? But I think that ultimately was what performed the best. And it was very much about like just me as a person being the same as I am in real life on camera.
You absolutely are 100%. How does Fraser feel about being Canada's
The-
YouTube heartthrob? I mean, like, what is it like now that he's famous?
Do you know, like there were many DMs in my Instagram being like, I think Fraser should be leading this show, or like, can somebody get Fraser his own YouTube show? But like, it's hilarious because again, going back to like, he's just so supportive and will do whatever I am asking him to be part of. But I think it's just it's hilarious, and he's amazing, and he's a very like buttoned up guy. It takes a minute for him to like warm up and for people to feel like, oh, we really like can get in deep with Fraser. And so I think just seeing that kind of like laid back side of him was, I think people liked it.
And he's like, and now it's documented. See, guys, I'm chill. I'm a chill
See?
guy.
I'm not as serious as you think.
I'm super
I'm
relaxed.
so relaxed.
Okay. Have you seen a direct correlation between YouTube growth and client inquiries?
Yes, yes. I would say hands down between my own YouTube and House and Home magazine. So they have a digital media division as well. And so I started to do a lot of property tours with them. That's kind of one of the things that they do on their digital media side. Between the House and Home videos and my own YouTube, I have seen like exceptional inquiries from that. And not only that, but the inquiries when I'm having my discovery calls, the conversion has been much higher than in the past, because people have said to me like, we feel like we know you, we know your personality, we know your style, we know like you like this or that. Or for example, I despise pot lights or recessed lighting or whatever, everybody calls them in different areas of the world. But people know that when they're working with me, the chances of me putting in a pot light are pretty slim to none. So it has given people an insight into me that would be very hard to translate on just like a 30-minute discovery call. So that's been great. And, you know, I've been very fortunate to have great print coverage as well, and that has been crickets in terms of inquiries. So video might be where it's at?
Okay, thank you for the very well timed transition to our next question. For designers listening who are just so intimidated by video, it just feels like, I mean, forget even just being comfortable on camera, just like the investment.
Yeah.
What would you say about the return on investment of long form content?
I would say, in my opinion, it is completely worth it. My ROI has paid itself off many times over. However, I do think you need to have a purpose in terms of what you are putting out there. I think to do it just to do it will probably fall flat because I think people need to learn something from you, or they need to experience something new, or they need to see something they've not seen before. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel to go onto video. You don't have to be the smartest or the best or whatever. But you need to have something that people are interested in. And so if you have a topic, or if you have a conversation point, or if you just want to go on to tell people more about your process or how you work, or little interview style episodes, the return is there. That gives people a really raw look of who you are, and what it's like to work with you. Because I do think there's an element of like, designers are these, we see them in print or on video, and like, oh, is it unattainable to work with a designer? It's like, no, we're just people. Like, but you just need to convey that on video. It's a lot easier to do that on video than anywhere else.
It's so interesting to me because your brand presence feels very polished and confident, very buttoned up. Your I mean, I feel like you are so warm personally, but like that comes across in video. How intentional were you about brand positioning early on? Because the way you are in person, and maybe that's why video has been so successful for you, because it's allowed you to tell this layered story
Yeah.
that like you're more than just super buttoned up and polished. You're very pleasant to be
Oh,
around.
nice. Thank you. I would say so. My sisters, they live in Vancouver. They run a boutique brand and marketing studio, and they have done my branding since the beginning. And they have been very vocal about how to appear kind of online, but not vocal in the way that it's like you have to look like this and you have to do this, but more about you are who you are. You're talented in this capacity. Show people that. Show people who you are and who you can help and what you can do. And let's also make sure your grid looks polished to a degree. And so I think there's an element of I have been focused on my brand identity for a long time and what I want it to come across as. But I'm a bit different than other designers where I will only post certain things, or I will only highlight something if it aligns with whatever. And I think, again, because it's just me. Like, I'm from Vancouver. I kind of just have this like laid back West Coast kind of vibe to myself. And I hope that doesn't sound like weird to say that about myself, but I just don't want to be too serious about it. I think I've been so fortunate to have the clients I have, and now I am trying more to speak to the type of clients that I want, very much so, and I will do that through continuing YouTube and all of that. But um, at the end of the day, like, I'm just a person who people trust to design their homes, and that doesn't make me any better or any worse than anybody else. And so let me just show my presence and my kind of my own life.
There's a lot of conversation in the industry that like, oh, are our ideal clients really on Instagram? People who have $10 million, whatever it is, $100 million, whatever ideal client, like top budget is you have in your head. Do you feel like those clients that you want to be speaking to are on YouTube?
On YouTube, yes. On Instagram, no. I do not think our ideal client lives on Instagram. YouTube, yes. And it's interesting because I do find that Instagram is very much, I don't know what all the generations' names are at this point anymore, but like 18 to like 45 or whatever, right? Like those people are on Instagram quite a bit. But I have found that it is the 40, 50, 60-year-olds that are on YouTube and watching YouTube. And so that is where I have found my inquiries are coming in, and those are my ideal clients. Yes, very much I feel like it's YouTube as opposed to Instagram for sure.
That is so
I know.
interesting.
I know.
Thank you for spelling that out. So, scaling quickly can be exhilarating and like the best, most fun adrenaline rush, but it's also so exhausting. And I know that like you and Fraser had that moment when it's like, what is this? What are we doing? What does this look like?
Yeah.
What has this level of growth cost you personally?
It had cost me the ability to be a present partner and mom. And I know you're a working mother as well. You always feel, hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth, but like you always feel like you're dropping the ball in some area, and like you want to be there when you have to be here, or vice versa. And I think at the end of the day, that kind of hard, intense conversation made me realize that first and foremost, my priority is my family, and my priority is my children and my husband. And I am fortunate enough to be able to implement the resources in the team structure to make sure that I can be those things outside of work. And so if you had asked me this question in June 2025, I would have said it has cost me my relationship to a degree, and my presence as a mom. Fast forward 8 months later or however many months later after working with Brooke, and I have gotten that back. And I did a lot of really tough work, and I cried a lot, and I spent many nights thinking, "Why don't I just give this all up?" But there was still something in me that was like, You don't need to yet. Try and exhaust other options." And so that ultimately was something that I was, um, very lucky to be able to do with Brooke. But again, like, as you know, there's a lot of work that's involved in that, and I put in the hard work and the effort, and I was really rewarded for that.
It is a lot of hard work. And I know we've talked, Paris, you've been so generous mentioning everybody that you worked with. I will make sure that everybody is linked in the show notes. Brooke of Brookstole Consulting is a dear friend and is so brilliant and great at what she does. I will make sure that she is linked. But I mean, what a testimony, like chills that she gave
She
you
did.
that back.
Yeah.
That is
Well,
incredible.
honestly,
Brookie, we love you.
she gave me my relationship back, and she gave me my like motherhood back. And I will cry if I talk about it anymore. So I just want to say that to Brooke and anybody who's considering working with her, there is no better decision that you could make.
Love that. Okay. What does sustainable growth look like to you now? Like what is next steps?
Okay, next steps are I need to go back to the refining of the processes. So, yes, we did our SOPs with Brooke, we did all of that. But now I want to make sure, how is the Muskoka team, who's working on different types of projects in the Toronto team, making sure that everybody has what they need kind of across the board. So it's a little bit of that. And then I would say, how do I kind of pull myself out of these like little base camp notifications and like that kind of thing? Because I'm like still deep into that kind of stuff, and everybody still wants my sign off and my approval on things. So I think the next step is kind of making sure that the seniors know, and anybody like our studio manager knows, like, you can make this decision and involve me if and when type thing. So that's probably it.
Okay, what does the next phase look like? Any top secret projects, expansions, collaborations? And I know there's top secret stuff we cannot talk about, but what are you allowed to share?
Okay, the top secret, yes, we cannot. But what I am allowed to share, which I is like a bucket list thing for me, and I'm so excited. most of my team and I are going to Italy in April. We are going to a quarry in Verona to go and look at how marble is extracted from these quarries. And then I get to have a collaboration with the slab gallery that we work with to develop. So they do like different water jet textures on different slabs. And so I get to pick a slab and pick the water jet texture. And it's going to be the Parris collection, which I'm like, this is so cool. But just to be able to have that experience and take my team, and it's just insane for me. And it's also lining up with Salone in Milan. So we will be at Salone for a few days as well during that. So that is something that I'm like, whew. And then my dream, I'm going to put it out there, but I really want to do a lighting collaboration. My ultimate goal would be with Huey Light Shop. So Huey, if you're listening, I'm there. But hit a girl up. But I would love to do a lighting collaboration. I think that'd be very cool.
All right,
Manifesting.
If you could give one piece of advice to a designer who is currently in year 1, year 2, they can be in year 20, but they're hoping for that 0 to 60 moment, what would you say it is?
I think the biggest thing is like figure out the why behind it. And hopefully that's not cliche to say, but just like, for example, I always wanted my Instagram followers to be high. I wanted to grow my Instagram and I wanted to have these followers. And because I felt that there was a correlation between cachet and being a respected designer and numbers. And then I got all these followers and it didn't really do anything. Like, it's cool. And I do think that people look on my profile and they're like, oh, she's got a lot of followers, so that's great. But if you want this 0 to 60 trajectory, like, why? What is it that you're looking to accomplish? And hone in on the ways that you can get there. And if you don't know how to get there, your podcast is a fantastic resource for figuring that out. And the community, the design community, is so much more open, I find, now than they were. And I think just ultimately figure out what your goals are. Set those 1, 3, 5-year goals, write them down, because man, when you look back and you see that you actually did accomplish your goals, that is a very, very rewarding feeling. But really, like, get to the root of the why is probably my biggest thing.
That is one of my favorite pieces of content you've ever put out there, actually, Paris. Your 2024 We Accomplished Our Goals video, you like shared like these were the goals and you're like boom, boom, boom. And to like be able to actually like cross it off is so amazing.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And one other thing I will say, again, my little tidbit from Design Camp, Amber Lewis was one of the keynotes while we were there. And she said when she was up on stage talking that comparison is the thief of joy. And that has resonated with me ever since. Do not worry about what anybody else is doing. Put your head down, do good work, be yourself, because again, cliche, but like there is no other you. And so that is how I think people will make their mark, as opposed to trying to be somebody else, and stop worrying about what other people are doing.
Paris, this has been so fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know that you were really excited when I asked you to be on the show. I was really excited to invite you on the show, but this was so clear, so transparent, and I really appreciate you taking the time to spell out exactly how you got here in this short amount of time, and we can't wait to see what comes next for you.
You're amazing. Thank you for having me. This is how I feel like I've made it to the big leagues.
You're there, girl.
You're the best.
You're batting 300 for sure.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay, bye.
For more in-depth analysis of this interview, including exclusive downloads, examples, and more, don't forget to subscribe to the Interior Collective on Patreon. We are building an amazing private community of interior designers and industry experts open to candid conversations and answering questions. Join us on Patreon in the show notes or at patreon.com/The Interior Collective. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Producing this show has truly been the honor of my career, and I cannot believe I get to have these conversations. A big, huge thank you to our production team at IDECO Studio and Quinn Made. Your contribution literally makes this podcast feasible. And the biggest thank you to you, our listeners. Your sweet notes, DMs, and reviews mean so much to us as we work to keep our show free and always accessible. Until next time, I'm Anastasia Casey, and this is The Interior Collective, a podcast for the business of beautiful living. A very special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Leloy, the makers of beautifully crafted rugs, pillows, and wall art, and to our episode sponsor and season partner, Materia, the design platform helping interior designers source materials, manage specifications, and streamline project workflows.